Sutton and I, back in the 70s, we understood that the Trilateral Commission was trying to grab resources. We knew that much back then. We just didn't know that technocracy was alive and that it was a resource-based economic system, and we had no foresight to see forward to sustainable development. But in the simplest terms I can say, from day one, this has all been about resources. They want you to have none, and they want to have it all. They would take every conceivable resource in the world that comes from the land, all of the land, the timber, the farming, the agriculture, the oil, the mining, you name it. Anything comes out of the earth, they want it. They want all the resources in their control. And they don't want you to have any. That's why private property has been under attack for the last 25 years. And they want you to own nothing, but they're telling you you're going to be happy about it. This has been a con job to grab the resources of the world from right under our noses. And they have been so frightfully successful at doing it. And it's just inconceivable. In South America, for instance, the countries that they put into debt in the first place and buried them with interest payments and debt repayment, they came crawling back on their knees saying, help us, we're doomed, we're going to go bankrupt, we can't possibly sustain this debt load. The United Nations came back to many of these countries and they said, we have a deal for you. We'll tell you what we'll do. We'll swap debt for land. We'll forgive you the principal of your debt. You still have to pay the interest on it, but we'll forgive the principal. If you turn over X tracts of land, resource-rich land in your nation, for us to manage for you, and they called it heritage zones. They're all over the world. And these countries got suckered into it. Actually, they were pressured into it, kind of an extortion deal, really. But they got pressured into doing this, where the United Nations has been racing around the world establishing these heritage zones as fast as they possibly can. In America now, our federal government owns 320 some odd million acres of land. You go, what? Our Constitution doesn't provide for them to own any land outside of military bases and some shipping ports. But why does the government need to own all this land? I expect the same is probably true in Australia too. A lot of land is not owned by people, it's owned by the government. And the government is not the people anymore. It's a private entity. And all those resources the government owns, like in the United States, the roads are closed, iron gates are put up, do not go in, no leases are allowed, nobody can go in and do economic development on that. And they got the resources under their control, and it's not under our control anymore. It robs the nations of its economic potential because you need resources to be economically successful. This was the Rockefeller dream, even going back to the early 1900s with John D. and the oil business. He wanted everything. He wanted it all. It's hard to imagine somebody's mind is so twisted that he thinks he has to get all the wealth of the world in his own pocket. But the Rockefellers were that way. They are still that way. David Rockefeller certainly was that way. He wanted the resources of the world. And they've pretty much succeeded in doing that. And sustainable development is going to be the mechanism that manages that global trust of resources. That's what they want.
So what's going to happen to us? I mean, when I hear about them talk about the fourth industrial revolution, I hear them talking about us staying home because working from home, no cars. I even saw an increasing talk about us eating processed bugs, for protein. Mm-hmm. There's a startup in Australia where they're converting maggots and bugs into protein bars, just like a movie, Snowpiercer, and other movies have used that. You said in your book that with 5G rollout that they could theoretically follow you all the way through your life, even knowing what products you own and all those other things, and moving to a cashless society. So maybe let's talk about that a little bit. So you talk about smart meters in your book, and you talk about cashless society as ways that they can know stuff about you personally. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. First, let's talk about energy. I think energy was the control mechanism for technocracy. They believed, and rightly so, that if it were possible to control the energy that was injected into the economic system, you'd control all economic output at the same time. If you want to shut down economic activity, shut off the energy, just turn off the lights, and they won't run the factories. This was part and parcel of the original technocrat dream, was to use energy to control everything in the economy. And they proposed having an energy script, as a matter of fact, where everybody would get a percentage or an allocation of energy script at the beginning of a period, like a month, and you could go out and buy goods and services based on how much energy it took to make those goods and services. So at the end of the month, if you had some left over, they expired, and if you ran out, you'd have to borrow from some, I don't know, get some somewhere else, or just go without, I guess. But that was going to be their financial system, was based on energy and energy control over energy. We see this today, big time. The war on carbon is just, it never stops, never stops. They want to control the carbon in the world. Why carbon? Because carbon represents energy. It's just, that's where all the energy is, and hydrocarbons, and oil, and natural gas, and shale, and coal. So controlling energy is a big deal to these people. What's the second part of your question? I got off on a track.
Getting information about you from the smart
Yes.
meters and all
Right.
that sort of thing, and even a cashless society recording all your purchases.
Right. Let me read to you the requirements, the first 5 out of 7 requirements that technocracy, the study course, technocracy study course, laid down in 1934, I think it was. There were 7, but the first 5 are just they really hit the nail on the head. Here's the first one. Register on a continuous 24-hour per day basis the total net conversion of energy. That's energy. Number 2, by means of the registration of the energy converted and consumed, make possible a balanced load. A balanced load. Balanced on your back, by the way, not balanced on their part, but the load will be balanced. Number 3, provide a continuous inventory of all production and consumption. Here you're getting into surveillance now. Continuous inventory, that's data, tracking data. Stuff gets made, shipped out, track it, wherever it goes. Number 4, provide a specific registration of the type, kind, etc. of all goods and services where produced and where used. Okay, again, you can see the economic nature of this. They wanted to track everything. Where does it go? Who eats it up? Who uses it, etc. Now, number 5, catch this. Provide specific registration of the consumption of each individual. Plus, wait, there's more. Plus a record and description of the individual. Boom. That was the original call, was for total surveillance of everything. And this is what we have today. This is what China's doing. This is what's happening in the United States. I'm sure it's what's happening in Australia as well. And most of the people doing this, I'm sure they never heard of the technocracy study course before. If you ask them, well, did you get your playbook? Was that your play? No, I never heard of that guy or that book or whatever. They probably don't know. But when we look back at the historical record, it's just absolutely unmistakable what they're trying to do today, what they are doing today. So somebody at the top knows full well what's going on. They understand the game, how it's being played. Data is the new oil of the 21st century.